Hey guys, want to talk about the journey to early retirement, financial independence, all that good stuff today. Going to be showing you net worth, my philosophy and the journey, some really interesting positions that I'm taking, what I'm doing in the portfolio. And I want to share all that with you. And all I ask is you just subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, new channel. And we're firing things off here. I'm going to show you everything under the hood, be very transparent with you. So net worth today sitting at $1.4 million, up over the last 3 months, 100,000. Assets to liabilities, 1.4 to 3,000. So just a little bit, hold a monthly credit card there. $1.4 million in net worth. Let's go ahead and get into one of the accounts here. So this is the M1 Finance account. There's actually several accounts in here. Between retirement and brokerage. And lately what I've been focusing on is my brokerage account because I want to get to retirement early. And the reason why I'm focusing on my brokerage account is because I need a way to live off of funds before I hit 59 and a half, right? So I've hit a milestone where in my investing journey, I've been investing almost 17 years, and I have got to a point where my retirement accounts are almost nearly fully funded, so I don't really have to make big contributions to them over the next 20 years in order for them to be flush with lots of funds for retirement. However, I need a bridge to get from to that point, and so that's why I've been focusing on brokerage. So having said all that, I am going to show you something very, very interesting here in my investing philosophy. How do I invest? This is a really small brokerage account I started a few years ago. Didn't really do anything with it except with basically withdraw funds from it to pay off my house early. And now I am building it back up along with another brokerage fund. And I want to show you how I invest in here. So in terms of what type of investor, I know some people are dividend investors, some people are growth investors, and everything in between. I would say that I'm really neither. I would say that if you had to say, am I dividend or growth, I lean towards growth, but I really like the large caps. And I also like to have other things in the portfolio besides dividend and growth stocks. I believe in diversification and diversification across many asset classes. So as you can see here, over the last few years, the Mag 7 and in this particular account has done over 189%. If you're wondering what the Mag 7 is, maybe you're new to investing, that's your Nvidias, your Teslas, Apples, Googles, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook or Meta. I also added Palantir in here and very recently Broadcom, and started a position here in this particular pie. And so at any rate, this is the Mag 7. So in terms of my investing philosophy, I like growth, I like large caps, but I also don't like to have a ton of dividend only stocks. And the reason for that is because I want to grow these accounts, and I am fully convinced that I'll be able to grow these accounts much quicker if I have growth stocks versus just dividend stocks. I also don't think that I am able to always beat the market. I don't think that I'm clever enough, that I am crafty enough to always be able to beat the market. And so I love ETFs, I love mutual funds, I love index funds that are low cost. And so I am not afraid to admit that I have a great deal of exposure in my portfolio to ETFs, mutual funds, and index funds. And in fact, they make up a large part of my overall portfolio simply because if I'm wrong on my individual picks, let's say I picked 1 or 2 stocks and I was wrong, then I don't want my portfolio to go to zero. Remember, I believe in diversification, and I believe that in many cases, the market, which by the way, has done very, very well over the last few years. Look, VU, I love VU, Vanguard ETF. It's up over 100% over the last couple of years. This is going back to sometime around 2022. 100%, it's done very, very well. The other percents showed down, and that's just because, don't be misled by that. That's because I've recently just added, I've been doing some maintenance. I mentioned this is a very small account, so I think it's my smallest account. In these particular pies, I've been adding these positions to get it. I have to do some upfront maintenance to get it set up to where I want it to be. So I've got VU, I want QQQ because I want tech exposure. I'll give you some of my thesis. Vanguard Tech and VGU. Now I realize some of you are probably thinking, well, this is just overlapping on all the Mag 7 and all the big tech stocks. Don't you know that? Well, that is true. Those companies have done very well, and there is a lot of overlap there. But at any rate, these are some of the best growth ETFs in my opinion, not financial advice. So these are ones that I'm setting up positioning in. I put this at 10%. So let me just go over some of this. I want to talk to you about the positioning. International securities, 5%. Dividend ETFs, 8%. Commodity producers, 5%. Yes, I have silver and precious metals here in the portfolio at small allocations, which, by the way, silver has done very well. People are like, oh, AI, tech stocks. Look at silver. 218%. It's pulled back a little bit recently, but it had an incredible run. And the reason why my thesis for precious metals to have as hard assets in the portfolio is basically a hedge. Basically a hedge in times of fear or scarcity, market pullbacks, and so on and so forth. It is good to have a diversified portfolio, and that's why I include precious metals. I don't have a ton of it in here, but I just have a little bit in here. And I know this pie is a small pie in my overall portfolio, but I do believe that it's basically representative. You could scale it up across my whole portfolio. It's representative of my investing philosophy. A lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to get dividends and my dividends come in quarterly, and that's how I'm going to retire early. That's fine if that's your philosophy. I'm not, poo-pooing on anyone's approach. That's just not my philosophy. That doesn't mean that I don't have dividends in my portfolio. I have dividend-paying stocks in my portfolio, which I'll get to in a second. I just don't have a big position in them. And what I'm saying to you, I think that's different from my portfolio than some of those that I've seen out there on YouTube and places like that, is I'm not like a hype stock type of a guy where I go all in on like 2 or 3 stocks and just pump them and then get rug pulled. That's not my portfolio. I don't do margin. I don't do call options. What I do is diversify the portfolio across various asset classes. And that is my approach, is slow and steady and the long game. And I'm fully convinced that my growth portfolio, which is like 70% of my whole portfolio, is allocated towards growth companies. I'm heavily positioned in growth because I think growth will grow my portfolio quicker than, let's just say, I was in a bunch of value plays and just dividend paying stocks that were yielding like 5-6%. They're not growing very fast, and I don't believe that I'll get to financial independence as fast in that way. So having said all that, I want to talk about some of these other positions here. I recently have been adding, and this is just over the last few weeks, I'm setting up maintenance on this account. So if you're someone who's new to investing and you're like, how do I get started? I would say that this is not the easiest way to get started in this type of, I would say this is moderate to more complex in terms of investing strategy. But if you're really just getting started, just buy the S&P 500 or VTI ETF. That's the best way to go. But what I'm doing here is I wanted exposure to space, military, and drones. And the reason why I have a thesis, that I think over the next decade, 2 decades, there's going to be more instability in the world. We already are seeing the war in Iran, and about 19 times it's gone back and forth that there's war, there's peace, there's war, there's a treaty, there's not, there's this, and it's a pump and dump. And just last night, there's going to be some documents signed, and Trump said this, the war's over, and then Iran said, oh, no, it's not, just kidding. And the market rallies, and the market pulls back, and so on and so forth. Who knows? But what I do know, at least I'm convinced that over the next decade or two, there's going to be more instability in the world, and I believe there's going to be more wars, and I think the companies that are going to benefit from it is going to be defense, space, military, drones. So you see here, I'm setting up these positions here. I recently bought these in over the last week or so. 55%, I'm just putting in an ETF in aerospace and defense. And then the rest is kind of in some blue chip companies, the Raytheons, Lockheed Martins, and so on. and then some smaller speculative plays. From there, AI and quantum. Look at AI and quantum with me just for a second. This is a brand new pie here. I put it at about 10%. First, I started with a semiconductor ETF, SMH. I really like this one. Just at 35% of this pie. And then the rest, ASML, we've got applied materials and so on. And some of these other holdings, AMD is sitting around 10%, something like that. Some of these other holdings are different parts of the AI framework and infrastructure. So that's what I'm positioning for. I do believe AI is going to be big. It's already big, and it's going to continue. So AI and quantum, dividend stocks. So let's talk about dividend. I have this at 10%. Over the last few years, actually, outside of companies like Caterpillar, the dividend pie is actually least performed. You can disregard the AI pie because I just started that one. But these other pies have been open for about 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 years, sometime in mid-2022. The dividend stocks, if I see these YouTubers, they're all about dividends, and they're talking to beginner like investors, and that's fine. But I do not believe that if I went all in on dividends 3-4 years ago, I would be doing as well as I am today. Just look at this pie. It's got a bunch of blue chip dividend stocks, I'll show you in a minute. It's at 44%, which isn't bad. But gold beat that. Gold is at 114%. Just being in gold and no dividend stocks alone, you would be beating that. The Mag 7, I mean, this is why I'm heavily positioned in the large cap growth companies, is because I believe they're going to do the best. Everyone knows NVIDIA has had a great run, up over 1,000% on NVIDIA. I was up even. These numbers aren't quite accurate because when you rebalance, it kind of skews them. I'm up over 1,200% in NVIDIA overall in the overall portfolio. 1,200%. You're just not going to get that in a lot of dividend stocks. And I don't want to cast too much shade on the dividend investors, certainly not dividend growth investors, because I really like the dividend growth model and philosophy of investing. But I'm just saying that for me, as someone in their 30s and has a longer runway, I'm not going to move my portfolio to heavy positions in dividend-paying companies and move away from growth until I get closer to that FIRE milestone, the early retirement milestone. And I suspect that I have about, depending on how things go, anywhere from like 5 to 10 years left. I don't know. It all depends on how the market does. So taking a look at some of these other pies, if you take a look at commodities, this is one that I think is overlooked sometimes. Commodity producers is basically a hedge. So think like oil, think like energy. When there's war that broke out between the U.S. and Iran, obviously the commodity producing companies, oil spiked, and so these companies went up. And so this kind of fits into my instability thesis in a decade, the next 2 decades. Part of my investing background is in macro. So I'm thinking about the macro overlay in the economy and geopolitical events and so on. And I'm looking at how I can hedge my portfolio on unforeseen events. So I want to have exposure to commodities. I want to use this in a similar way as precious metals, but not quite the same way, simply because oil is going to spike when you have a situation like U.S. and Iran that we have going on. So commodities is another part of the portfolio. And again, just showcasing this as, one of the smallest accounts I showed in the beginning of this video. The whole portfolio is at 1.4 million. And I wanted to use this as an example of a brokerage account because my next milestone is I need to get the brokerage account up to about, my guess is around 750 to 1 million, to where I can move it over to more dividend paying stocks and ETFs and use that as one of the pegs, so to speak, for early retirement. So we talk precious metals. There's a little bit of powder on the side, BILL, BILL ticker, get like 3.5% yield on that. We talked about space, military, drones. We talked about AI. We didn't really touch too much on the dividend stocks yet, so let's look at that. The dividend stocks, obviously Caterpillar has had a nice run. I could show you some other pies and accounts and retirement ones that have a very similar makeup of positions. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you that. And let me go ahead and move over to here. Caterpillar, Cisco, United Health, Altera, Walmart, JP Morgan, FedEx, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Starbucks, and the kitties and everyone are ready to go to the beach. So I'm going to have to cut this video short, but I think you've seen enough for now. Let me go ahead and